this is just the beginning. That's the world that we live in. Let me help you believe in what we can do when we stand united. We are one with the world. We can make a brighter tomorrow. Together make a change. It's our life. We can't step back from what we know is right. So let's shine our light. Oh, let's shine our light. We won't listen to what they're saying. We know it's just love that we're giving to this place that we call our home. We can't change what's been done, but it's still our run. We are one with the world. We can make a brighter tomorrow. Together make a change. It's our life. We can't step back from what we know is right. So let's shine our light.
I am Sanjoy Roy, the co-chair of the Catalyzing Change Week Programming Committee. Welcome to Catalyzing Change Week 2024. This is where we'll not just have conversations, but we'll actually see change. We'll see change makers, innovators within the social space. You'll meet government folks and funders. You'll see people who've done excellent good practice that we can learn from. And most importantly, it'll be a place to network, learn, and exchange ideas. So do dive right in to the Catalyzing Change Week 2024 and enjoy the experience.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary Fifield, and I have the great privilege of moderating this session today. I would like to start, maybe we can start with a round of introductions of the panelists, and then we'll dive into conversation. We hope this is going to be a very interactive and engaging session, and we'll leave time for questions toward the end, so all of you can learn more, share your experiences. Why don't we go ahead and start with you, Emily? Could you just share your name and where you're calling in from today, and maybe a brief description of your organization and why you wanted to be a part of this panel?
Thanks very much, Mary, and welcome everyone. We're so glad to have everybody here today. My name is Emily. I work for Go Philanthropic Foundation. I'm based in London in the UK, but we're actually a US-based foundation. We identify community-based organizations working on health, education, and human rights. And then we provide grants to support their greatest needs. So usually it's overhead costs, staff salaries, things like that. We also provide some capacity building support and training for leaders to help organizations to become stronger and more sustainable. Our funding comes from individuals and family foundations in the US. So we've got an amazing and very active community of donors who are all passionate about supporting change at the community level. So we're really excited to be here today and share some of the learning and the experiences we've had over the years, and also, to be on this panel with two of our really amazing partners who are doing really critical work at the grassroots level. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Alejandra, would you like to go next?
Yeah, of course. Well, my name is Alejandra Rosado. I'm from Mexico, and I'm in charge of the resource mobilization of the organization Una Mano para Oaxaca, or UMPO, as we would like to say. And well, in Una Mano para Oaxaca, we work with livelihoods and on the community with women and children. And what we do is to work with traditional trades, like for making boundaries with the territory in which we live, which is a original population in Zapotecas. So, well, we have been working with Go Philanthropic since 2 years ago. And well, when they invited to me, I was like very excited about being here because I think that when we are so inspired with this philosophy, the philanthropy, and we think that the most important is to have a lot of communication between founders and grassroots organizations. So this space is like very particular and necessary for to do this. So I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandra. Anjana, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Mary. So I'm Anjana. I'm based out of India. I work with an organization called Equal Community Foundation, ECF. Our direct program is in one of the districts in India, Pune. And so ECF started with a mission to raise every boy in India to be gender equitable. It was started by Will Muir and Rujuta Desai. And for a decade, we've been running this gender transformative program with boys in the age group of 13 to 17-year-old. And because we saw the evidence that this kind of a program works, we started something called as Project Race, which is actually scaling this approach of working with boys. And we are very glad that Go Philanthropic Foundation has been one of our initial partners who trusted us with piloting this scaling approach. So we've taken this approach of working with boys across India, and thanks to GoPhil to be our trusted partners since 2017, if I'm right. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anjana. Mai, how about you?
Hi, everybody. I'm Mai. I'm based in Guatemala. I also work with Go Philanthropic Foundation, which we call GoPhil for short. So you might hear us refer to the foundation as GoPhil. And I'm really happy to see that many people are interested in this topic, because this is the main reason why I wanted to join this panel. First, of course, just having the opportunity to have this conversation with people who I admire so much, and it's like we work so well together. But also because I feel that this is a very interesting topic, and I feel that often when we talk about trust-based philanthropy, you can think like, oh, how do we do this? Like it sounds complicated, or how to actually put it into practice. Like it sounds very nice, like the principle, but how to bring it to practice. I've had this conversation in person with many colleagues. And so I was excited to maybe have a larger audience of people that are interested in this topic as well.
Great. Thank you, Mai. Thank you, everyone. My name is Mary Fifield. I'm the Executive Director of Marigold Fund and former Director of Grant Making for Cottleton Fund. And we have had the privilege and the joy of working with Go Philanthropic for the last several years now. And so when Emily asked me if I'd be willing to moderate this panel, I was delighted, because there's been so much learning that I've benefited from in our partnership with Go Philanthropic, and the different ways that we have kind of collectively shared our assets together has been really beneficial for the work that I do and the other organizations that I work with, and just really personally fulfilling. So it's really a joy to be here, and I'm excited to get into the conversation. And just want to thank Catalyst for the opportunity to have this platform, to have this conversation. So with that, why don't we get right into some storytelling? Why don't we start off with Mai and Alejandra? Could you both tell us a little bit about your partnership, a little bit more about how you first connected, what you each bring to the table in the partnership, and some of the goals and values that you have in common?
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Well, I could start my. So, well, when we met Mai, the first visit she made to our community, she wasn't our project officer through GoFeel. She just went there and to learn about the territory and just to see like the field as it is, to see the life here. So this allows us, like, I think that to focus on the relationship since the beginning. And well, we share with her everything we were doing and what worried to us and what hurt us and what does inspire us. And from this moment, everything flowed like very naturally with GoFeel. It was very, I think that it was very important that the first meeting we make, we see each other as like humans, as women. So, well, since then, I think that the most important is that we renew our confidence in what we do in Una Mano para Oaxaca, in UNPO, because Mai helped us from like through GoFeel, not just for being like the foundation that was working with us, but she was a real, she's a real bridge like between us, like grassroots organization and the funders. And this helped us a lot because sometimes it's difficult to explain what we do. And because we work with community livelihoods, and sometimes it's this kind of experience that if you don't like live the experience in the place, it's difficult to put it in paper, you know? So these visits that Mai make since the beginning, I think that we make like this boundary that stays until now, and that is like very strength, so, and very powerful. So, well, that's the way we met, and what we are working on is like very, it's something very big, and we're very happy to work with Go Philanthropic. I don't know, Mai, if you want to add something.
Yeah. So I think it's also important to mention that we met post-pandemic, and that GoFeel also was going through like an expansion process, because we hadn't worked in Oaxaca until 2021. We initially started thinking about expanding to Oaxaca before the pandemic, and a team went to Oaxaca to explore and understand you know, the region better. But of course the pandemic happened, and then everything changed, and it was, you know, that we had to relearn about the region. So when Ale says that I went there before we actually started a relationship, it was based on that, like our need to understand the region better, what were the actual issues, you know, that the grassroots organizations were facing, and whether we were needed, you know, like if it was even important for us to work there. So it was very important for us to connect with amazing leaders, like we ended up doing. I actually heard about Una Mano para Oaxaca by talking to different colleagues in the region, just telling them my reason to be in Oaxaca. And the interesting thing is that Una Mano para Oaxaca doesn't work in the city or the center, which, you know, it's like more accessible. They are around 6 hours away by bus from the center. So as they have told me before, like not many people visit them, and they were very excited, you know, like when I got there. But to me, that's just so important. It's part of our vetting process, you know, just to interact with people. We try to do it in a way that it's like, of course, setting clear expectations, but also opening up possibilities. So like conversations are honest and transparent and flowing. And like I said, we were expanding in GoPhil. So we also had our internal processes, it's not like we could just like visit an organization, do the vetting process and start supporting them immediately. We had to go through certain steps first. So I think that was very important for us as well. Like Ale and the UMPO team were very understood this, and were very transparent and asked great questions about it. They were really good at showcasing their work, and the things like Alice says that are sometimes difficult to explain if you're not living it, if you're not experiencing it, because it's a very specific reality. Like Zapotec people are so interesting, like as a culture. There's some very specific issues that are happening in the region, not just the pandemic, but also other complicated issues that are happening right now. So just having that opportunity, I think it also had to do with how open the UMPO team was, of course, like trusting me, based on our interactions to bring me to the communities is something that I will always be grateful for. And to this point, I just came back from a trip to Oaxaca, and I was at Lismo at one of the gatherings that they just organized for youth. And I'm just so grateful that they trust us, they trust me to be there representing GoPhil, but more than anything, just supporting their work. And I must say that from the beginning of this relationship, we've seen like our interactions being formed by similar experiences, like similarly as them. Like we've also gone through different processes, like transitions in leadership at around the same time, or like specific challenges around the same time. Of course, like the whole sector had to adapt after the pandemic, right? And like how like resource mobilization, like Alice says. I just feel like we've experienced this together. And one of the things that I enjoy the most about my relationship with UMPO and with Ale is just that openness that has been there from the beginning, that sense of trust. And I do think it has to do with how like we set the grounds for the relationship from the beginning, from the like even before the vetting process, like per se, and just like having that openness to show us their community, for us to be completely open about our processes, in order for them to feel comfortable enough to have shared their work with us. So
great. Wonderful. Thank you, Mai. Emily and Anjana, how about you? Can you tell us a little bit about how you connected, what you both bring to the table in terms of the partnership, and goals and values that you share?
Do you want me to start, Anjana?
Yes, Emily, go ahead.
So, I mean, I'll try not to repeat a lot of what Mai and Ale have just said, but obviously a lot of that resonates, and kind of very similar. We were at the time, like GoPhil was looking for a partner in India that was working with boys and men, because we realized that we had many partners working with girls and women on gender equality issues. But we specifically thought that there was a real gap. We were looking for some real innovation around, who's working with adolescent boys to promote gender equality and to address issues like gender-based violence. So we were actually recommended ECF by another funder that we had contacted and asked for recommendations. And from our very first conversation with ECF, we were just so impressed by their knowledge. This enormously committed team. They had some very innovative approaches, and we just felt a real connection. Like we really felt that we had a lot of shared values around learning, around openness, around transparency. Like Mai said, I think it's really important, like for funders to also kind of share challenges that they're facing, because then it creates this kind of this openness, and it means that everybody can be open about the fact that this work is tough, and there are challenges there, and so that we kind of created a lot of really honest conversations right from the start. And similarly to what Mai said about visiting the communities, like I felt so privileged. Like I've visited ECF's communities with them a few times now, and it's always makes a huge impact. But I remember the first time I visited, and them being willing to take us into the communities and show us what they were doing, and the response to the organization in the communities. You could see like how much respect the communities and the boys had for their facilitators. And it felt like, you know, a real privilege to be able to see that work happen. And the fact that kind of ECF kind of trusted us and felt comfortable to do that was, you know, something that we really appreciated.
Thank you, Emily. I think I'm really liking this conversation, and thanks to Catalyst and GoPhil to have invited us. And I also saw a comment where we're all, I mean, having this kind of conversation is very rare, where funders are partners and both are actually equally talking about a collaborative approach. So thank you for this platform. Like Emily said, I think there was that connection right from the beginning for us. The missions, the goals aligned for us. And I think for us, it was very, as ECF, we were right from the beginning. Our focus has been on quality and not on the quantity, not on the numbers. So, because it's a gender transformative program, our program is about behavior and attitude change, which takes a long, long time. So, here numbers are something that we won't be able to show. We literally talk in 2 digit or 3 digit numbers, but and unfortunately for a lot of funders, it's numbers what matters. And I think thanks to GoPhil that they understood what we did, and they saw the impact. And like Emily said, or even Mai said, I think they've actually gone to the communities, they've understood the program at the grassroots level, instead of talking and understanding from a person who is giving you a presentation is not going to give you an actual story. So to be able to invest that time, more than money, it's to be able to invest that time and energy in understanding what the organization does, and in understanding what kind of impact it creates and what community people need. So ultimately we're all working for the community. So I think GoPhil has that value of shared value of where we work for the community and not we don't work for each other. So I think that is something I really value. And fortunately for ECF, we've been having good partners like GoPhil, where we are able to be very transparent. Like Emily said, we were able to be open and transparent because they trusted in us, they confided in us. So I think it's easier for us to be able to put our challenges openly, to be able to share our failures. So rather than just the positive stories, okay, this is what has happened, or this couldn't happen, this has been our practical challenges. So I think that is something that as an organization, if we have to thrive, if we have to really do some real work, if I may to say, I think we need partners like GoPhil, who are able to who see beyond money, is how I would put. Like, so it's not just the money when you give. And so the whole power dynamics of I am a funder and it's a funder driven thing is something that we never saw with GoPhil right from the beginning. And I think that is something I personally and ECF really values a lot. And yeah, I mean, that is one of our major major learning from our collaboration. Also, I think during pandemic, it has been a wonderful relationship, because if I have to put across, pandemic had created a lot of challenges for every one of us sitting here. But for ECF, there was a dual challenge, because I'm not sure how many of you are aware about something called as FCRA, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act in India. And so there was a delay during pandemic for us as an organization, which means we could not access foreign funds at that point of time. So for 2 years we couldn't access GoPhil funds, but still we were there beyond money. So I remember having a lot of conversations with Emily, and it was like a sounding board where we could literally talk and understand each other's challenges, and also to understand, okay, what can we do differently, what can we do, can we do something else. And also to be able to open to understand that, okay, the same strategy that we worked before pandemic might not work after pandemic. So then can we repurpose the grant? So all these open conversation is something I really appreciate. And I think I should stop there. Otherwise I can go on and on. Thank you.
Thank you, Anjana. There's so much so many wonderful points that came out of just this part of the conversation, and I just want to track a couple, and some of them are also coming up in the chat. I heard things like really taking the time to get to know each other mutually, both ways, being flexible. And another thing I think that you pointed out, Anjana, about the numbers is understanding what kind of information is actually most useful to the people doing the work and the communities, and using that as a basis for furthering the relationship and looking at other types of support and things like that. So anyway, wonderful answers and reflections to those questions. Why don't we talk a little bit, go into a little bit more depth about kind of relationship building. What would you all have to say about kind of what some of the building blocks are to building trusting relationships? I mean, we've talked a little bit about it, but if you have a particular story or a particular quality that really stands out, is there someone who'd like to speak to that question?
Yeah, well, I would like to mention some things.
Great.
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, the most important thing for us is like communication with funders. And well, I think that because the honesty with which we can have these conversations, and this is what will give us like appreciate each other transparently. So I think this is a very important quality. And in that moment, the relationship feels like balance and equal. So this allows us to share like with the founders, not only the good things, but sometimes there are other things to share, and sometimes are more and more notices like the good ones. And this strengthens the relationships and truly transforms us like as individual people. I think that, and like at the same time, listen to each other from there, first as human beings, and as we mentioned, who want a common goal, and then we talk about how we can coordinate to find a common strategies or complementing each other. And that is why we need like relationships based on trust and with clear like limits and healthy boundaries. Also, well, I think that something that was very important with Gofield when we met Maya is that we felt that she was looking us as individuals, as like professional people, that we are working on this. And this was essential because sometimes like the possibilities of capacity building are like very short in some foundations. And here we can feel that you are like giving something that will stay with the organization, like a legacy that will stay in the organization. And also maybe if our relationships will end in some moment, this will stay, and this will help us to have more tools for working what we do. And I think that's very important to see that the teams we are working with are individuals, and they are because of some conviction and working there. There's some like very powerful on that, and when that happens with the foundations, we feel that, and the results are amazing, are really amazing with these kind of relationships.
Right, and I think that that's another example of kind of the strength or an asset, so to speak, that goes beyond the money. It's this kind of longevity that you're talking about, Alejandra, which is really powerful and important. Anybody else want to comment on that particular question?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I would love to be in here. Thanks, Mary, and thanks, Ale. I think, yeah, we've talked quite a bit about communication, and I think that's really key. That kind of creating that space for open communication. The one thing that we've always tried to do is be a sounding board for partners. And I'd also say that, our partners have been a sounding board for us and helped us with many challenges and listened. So this is really quite mutual. But I think that's really key because, a lot of our partners say that, they often feel like, they're doing the heavy lifting at the local level and, really important kind of critical work in their communities, but often working in quite an isolated way. and don't necessarily have, people that they can go to kind of brainstorm ideas or to kind of use as sounding boards. So, I think that's a really critical kind of communication aspect that we've really focused on. But I would also kind of add here that I think a lot of it is around attitudes and values. I think Go Phil, right from the beginning, right from when the founders set up the organization, kind of came from the viewpoint that we're there to support and serve our partners rather than the other way around. So, Go Phil's approach has always been to identify really amazing organizations who are doing inspirational work at the local level, and then to kind of ask them, what can we do to help you? What can we do to support you? But I think there's still too much in the funding world is focused around the other way. It's kind of it's almost like partners are there to kind of serve funders' goals. So I think it's really kind of coming from the approach that the community-based organizations are the experts and we're there just to support them. We don't have the answers. We need to kind of go in with a lot of humility and a really learning approach and see what we can do to support, whether that's through funding or any other kind of non-financial support. And the final point I wanted to add here is seeking feedback. And I think that the problem, the reality is that funder grantee relationships are imbalanced. Fundamentally, there is an imbalance there. And I think one of the ways that it can be addressed is by constantly seeking feedback, either kind of one-to-one or creating anonymous spaces for feedback. But most importantly, being prepared to act on that feedback. So making sure that, when suggestions are made for improvements or changes, the funders really work as hard as they can to try and implement those changes and to kind of implement that feedback.
Thank you, Emily. That's really wonderful insight. And just a note, there's a lot of wonderful comments happening in the chat. If you all have questions, if you want to drop them into the chat or drop them into the Q&A, we'll do our best to get to as many of them as we can as we wrap up the session. Let's talk a little bit, you all have mentioned in different ways how the relationships help support the work in times of difficulty, both from on the part of Go Phil and also on the part of your organizations. Anjana, did you want to speak a little bit to kind of a story or some examples of how the partnership has helped you overcome obstacles? You mentioned a little bit during the pandemic, but maybe if there's more to share there.
Yes, thank you, Mary. I think I did mention very briefly in my when I was sharing earlier. One of the things I would say is, like Emily also mentioned, it's listening to each other, understanding each other, and understanding the problems that we face. So for us, I think it's been much smooth conversations. We did not have to take any pressures. How do we communicate? Because as organizations, there's always this pressure of, okay, we have a funder call today. What do we communicate? What needs to be put in the slides? So we don't have that pressure of, okay, how many slides and how do we present and how do we, for us it's like, okay, this is what we've done, this is what has happened, and we need to communicate and say very openly. So I think that has been, like, in general, if I have to talk about the problems and challenges that we've been facing right from the beginning, that we've been working with GoPhil, is something for us has been very easy to communicate. And because we were able to communicate it openly, and there were right questions from Emily and Gofil to understand, and the question is not just for the sake of questioning like a lot of other funders do. The questions are just to understand, okay, what's happening and how we can support. So I think that brainstorming really helped us come up with suggestions together to improve the work, to learn from each other and see what we can do differently. So I think that innovation, that ideas do come by when we actually share those challenges and problems. To specifically talk about one example, I would go back to the pandemic part of it. So I think one of, like I said, we were not able to access the funds, but at the same time we were trying to implement the program the way we can, and the way we, so through online, like all of us might have done. So with all those limitations we're trying to do, but we were also in a process of revisiting our strategy. And so we had to communicate this well in advance to all our funders, to say that we probably want to just revisit the strategy, and we might even actually change the whole program and see what we want to do, how we want to do. And I remember Emily giving that free hand and being available just for the call, just for brainstorming, because as organizations we would like to hear different views and different opinions. So it's not just the organization who is building strategy, we actually work with community people. So lots of consultations within the community, lots of consultations with the community people, but also consultations with funders. And as GoFil, I think they've already, I mean, they've always been that supportive, that it was like a team member sharing something, and then, okay, can we do this, can we try this, how does this work? So that kind of a brainstorming really helped, I think, in during that process. Because I remember we shared our rough draft with a few of our partners, including GoFil, and then GoFil had their suggestions to it. Of course, they did tell that do whatever the organization wants, but they had their suggestions, and I think that really helped. And that the understanding of what is needed at what time is one, and second is to be able to understand that need and to be able to easily repurpose the grant. Because I know GoFil works with a lot of philanthropists, so it's difficult for Emily also to communicate with their funders, and Mary and Emily might be able to talk about this better. But I think that mediating, but having that smooth conversation and taking it forward, so that is something I really appreciate. And during problems and challenges, like I've been talking about, I think this is something that has helped us a lot. That active listening, like Ale mentioned, and empathy. And the other thing I would say is, as funders, we always face problems when we do field visits, because a lot of funders would do field visit just for that checklist, checkbox. Okay, we've gone to this organization, we did our, no, we went to monitor this organization to see if our money is going to the right place. But I think with GoFil, it has always been, community visits have always been more enriching experience, more learning experience, and enjoyable. Because that there should never be a pressure of, okay, this is what I want, this is how it needs to look. This is the community, these are our challenges, we work with these limitations, you come and see. So we have our own community visit protocols, and which needs to be respected, because we are working for them and not for them and with them, and not the other way around. So Emily and GoFil team has always understood this need, and to be able to help us remove that pressure. So I think that's another thing I would say. So it's a huge relief when we work with partners like GoFil. So we don't have any kind of pressure, it's like equal partners, true partners, that we, the question, as question says. And it's just easier in terms of smooth conversation, in terms of um, understanding each other and doing what is right for the community. And more importantly, I think GoFil is also someone who invest in the team, in capacity building, in administrative expenses, if I may put it like that. So as an organization, we have these challenges around nobody funding us for actual admin work, and as resources also, because we as as ECF, because our work is on facilitation, on actually going and training, we rely hugely on our human resources, and so salaries come as a major part of our work. So it's a core program cost. So I think, which a lot of funders wouldn't take it as salaries as a cost. So if you don't pay the salary, how are we going to actually work? So I think this is something, again, Emily and GoFil understand, and we've seen them actually investing on the approach and idea, rather than dividing that cost to not admin or not salary. So I think that is another challenge that organizations face, and GoFil has been able to help us around that.
That's great. You know, I feel like, Anjana, what a thread that's running through what you're saying is that when funders and organizations take the time to get to know each other and invest that, it opens up the possibility for other conversations that wouldn't happen otherwise. You know, you start to build that trust, ideas can come to the fore. And then, you know, as you said, Anjana, Emily and GoPhil could see that, you know, salaries are really part of the work. They are not administrative costs. You know, this is long-term. This is a long-term investment. It's a long-term, there are long-term goals that you're trying to achieve. And that knowledge and understanding makes that kind of support possible. So thank you for sharing that. I actually, on this topic, I'm wondering, Emily or Mai, if you would have any thoughts about how this work improves your capacity as funders. You know, we often talk about capacity building for organizations, but trust-based philanthropy really builds the capacity of funders too. Would either of you like to speak to that briefly? Go ahead, Mai.
Yeah, no, Mary, I love this question because I actually think that learning is one of the most important benefits of this type of relationship. Like similarly as trust, you know, learning happens organically, right? You don't need a specific time in your cycle to build trust or to learn, right? I think Emily was the one that talked about attitude, and I think learning is an attitude as well. And I think that the fact that we build these relationships based on trust allows continuous learning. And I want to talk about two types of learning that we've seen happen at GoPhil and with the partners. And the first is, of course, the mutual learning. As I said before, of course, we see our different processes and the different stages of the organization or different issues or things that are going well reflected back from our partners, right? Like it's happening in like all of the organizations at the same time. So just having that wealth of knowledge coming from all of these leaders in different parts of the world that are, you know, experiencing sometimes it's the same issue, just with different aspects, you know, but so much knowledge there. Just having these conversations has informed our work so much, and I think has allowed us to be innovative. At some point we had an advisory panel conformed by leaders of our partner organizations, you know, were like giving us feedback, like direct feedback and information like that we needed to make decisions. Emily mentioned feedback. Like each year we send our partners a feedback survey so we can get direct you know, like feedback from them. And it has just been so much of what we do, you know, has been a response to that. Because like Emily said, it's not just about learning and hearing, right? Listening. It's also about acting on this feedback that we're getting. For instance, during the pandemic, we came up with a rapid response fund because we were talking to our partners, because we knew, you know, that they were having emergencies and they needed funding immediately, and that we needed to adapt, right? Like we couldn't just continue working like we were working because we were used to it, but we had to adapt. And I think this was all informed by our partners. And I must say that things that we do, like the way that we work with reporting, for instance, like I must say that we've made different changes in order to adapt to first our partners' needs. Like I think it was you, Mary, that mentioned at some point, like how can we just focus on the information that the partners need for decision making, for their work, instead of what we need for X or Y reason, right? So it's actually super interesting to focus on that, like what you need and why you need it. It really allows us to understand the programs better. The other thing is just by having these open lines of communication, where it's like you don't have to wait for me to reach out to you, or you don't have to wait until this time in the cycle so that we can have a conversation, but it's more like a constant relationship, right? That it just informs us so much and allows us to understand and learn so much about the partner's work that really we get to ingrain it in our work. And I think that learning happens like that among partners as well, you know, because we also do that. We also connect them. We believe in cross-learning. We have often seen how leaders in grassroots organizations can feel isolated sometimes because they're working in small teams. Sometimes I'm working in remote areas, of course, and the day-to-day work just absorbs them. And, you know, sometimes it's like that sounding board is missing within your organization, but just having that space, you know, but also other leaders. And we have this, you know, group of leaders that are like very like-minded, that are like working often towards the same cause, often using similar strategies, often experiencing similar challenges. So also that, right? Understanding how much knowledge and assets are there and that we connect them. So for instance, one of the things that we have been working on is creating learning networks within regions. So Anjana, for instance, has participated in the India and Nepal network. Ale has participated in the Guatemala and Oaxaca network. So the idea is that we facilitate that cross-learning. So sometimes we do workshops. Right now we're planning for a gathering in July where we're just going to be working on sustainability, like all together, like the leaders of the organizations just meet. And we learn, right? It's just like that open and perfect space for everybody to share and absorb. And that happens for us as well, you know, like we're participants, we're part of the network, right? Like it's just like we're part of it, right? It's not like we're there observing or monitoring. No, we're participating, we're learning and we're sharing our experiences. We see that as well between partners.
Great, thank you, Mai. Emily, I'm wondering, there's a question from one of the participants, and maybe you can fold that into an answer here. The question is, funders, how can your internal structures be reimagined to prioritize relationship building and long-term support rather than just project-based funding? Can you speak to that from the GoPhil perspective?
I did. I spotted that question. So thank you, Jacob. I think that's a really great question. I mean, one thing I'd say from the GoPhil perspective is we don't really do project-based funding. I mean, we enter into a partnership with our partner and we ask what their kind of biggest needs are and we fund that. So sometimes it is a specific project that they ask for support for, often a new project, a startup project that they have that they want to get off the ground. But it's not necessarily, you know, we've supported things like accountant salaries, we've supported executive director salaries, fundraiser salaries is quite common. So it's not always project funding. I think the time question, like the long-term relationships part of the question, is really key. And actually when GoPhil started, we originally had this idea that our partnerships would last around 3 to 5 years. And then after a while, we realized that was sort of arbitrary. Because, you know, like Anjana's mentioned, you know, change at the local level takes a really long time, especially if you're looking at things like behavior change. You know, our partners are working on things like gender transformation, child marriage, you know, issues that aren't going to change overnight. And some of our partnerships have kind of phased out around the 5-year mark. Some of our partners you know, haven't really, you know, they've gone on to get much bigger grants than we can provide, so they haven't needed our funding anymore, and we've kind of phased out. But, you know, some of our partners we've had since the beginning of GoPhil, so really long-term partnerships. So I think that's really critical for funders, is to enter into a partnership thinking this is going to be long-term or this may be long-term, and being prepared to kind of go on that journey without a kind of clear time frame in mind. And, you know, like I mentioned before, I think, you know, there needs to be much more funders saying to partners, like, you know, we love your organization, we love your work, like, where do you need funding support, rather than funders going in saying, we want to fund X project or Y project. And, you know, with some of our partners, we've funded different things each year as their needs have changed. And with some, it's been kind of the same needs, but it's very much driven kind of by what the partners need at that time.
Great. Anjana and Alejandra, I wanted to ask you, you know, we've been talking about things that funders can do to sort of cultivate trust-based relationships. From the perspective of community-based organizations, are there tips or ideas that you have for other people working in the field for what they can do to sort of cultivate these relationships? If we're trying to build this kind of mutuality, what kinds of things can organizations do to help kind of cultivate that?
Okay, Alish, can I go first?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I think we've been talking about this a lot, but very quickly, I would like to share that I think trust is very, very important. I do understand there could be organizations who probably um, I mean, there would be that doubts about whether the work is real or not. But as funders, when there is that initial due diligence process or initial understanding process, if I may say, in a positive sense, to understand the program completely and go in the GoFil did, go to the field, understand the work from the field perspective and not just the presentation perspective, and look at the impact. And then once you decide, okay, this is a partner we want to continue partnering with and we want to invest on, then I think it should be like that equal partnership. Once you trust, once you build that trust initially, which there will be a lot of to and fro, and it will take time for both of them to mutually come to an agreement. But once that agreement is done, I feel then the like GoFil does, there should be that trust among the partners that okay, I mean they have been doing it, and if there are challenges, they are openly sharing about it. So that openness, to be for us to be able to transparently communicate to the funders, it's important that they show that trust in us. They understand, okay, failures are part of learning. So which is very important, because a lot of time as organizations we really struggle a lot to talk about our failures, because our thing is about, okay, there is this money from them, and if we didn't do this, how do we communicate, what do we say? So I think we as organizations should not have that pressure, because otherwise our work doesn't get real. We need to produce that quality work there. So for that, I think that smooth communication, to be able to transparent and honestly communicate, is very important. So I would say trust, empathy, that sounding board kind of a thing. I understand not every funder would be so easily become a sounding board, but even just that understanding of, okay, we can pick up a call and talk about this. So there's a huge challenge that has come in. I don't have to worry about how to write an email, how to say this, but I can put it across in my own words and say this. So I think that is important if we really have to do real work, because we all work with that limited human resource. So we do not have another, somewhere a person who would just talk to the funders, who would write reports. We do multiple things, one person does multiple things. So for that, if funders are so understanding, and they do understand that, you don't need like multiple reports. You can have one template and you can come up with your way how you want to put it. And the important things, we don't need everything. So again, it shouldn't be just the checklist, it should be to understand the work. So I think, yeah, maybe this is like a very positive image, but like I said, ECF has been fortunate to have good funders like GoFil, who are true for partners for us. I'll stop there because I'm sure Ale would have a few points.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Anjana.
Anjana.
That you said everything. But I would like to pick up again what Mae mentioned about the network we have been working, because I think that as she said before, this is like a kind of story. Since last year, GoFil managed like to organize this network between organizations in Latin America with which they are working with, from Guatemala and from Oaxaca. And the last year we have the opportunity to get together to go to the Shift the Power, this event in Colombia, in which there are donors and grassroots organizations, and we can have different conversations. And this was I think that it's a very practical thing to do, because it was like very specific. I mean, the Shift the Power is just like, I think each 2 years of difference to have another Shift the Power. But in that moment, we could learn from the other organizations that are working with Go Philanthropic, and it was very powerful. I think that this kind of experience are like truly transformative, because we could exchange experiences, and not only about talking about like what we do in our fields, but also with these interactions between donors and grassroots organizations in this event. And well, I think that try to to have this kind of experiences is very important, and it's a good tool for the funders and for the grassroots organizations. And well, also I want to rescue like the part of the flexible fundings that has been very important for UNPO, because we live like in a very conflictive territory from different things. But the most important is that also we have like fiscal problems sometimes to have the proof of what we are from what we are using the money. And these flexible fundings have been very helpful, because we can like prove the foundation that we are using the money to what we said we were going to, but not with all the statements that are sometimes very difficult, because we are a community that it's very a part of the cities and doesn't work like in the cities in here. So we have different strategies, and we have we need to have these trustful conversations with Maya in this case, so we can explain what is going on. And sometimes this is not easy to have in the foundations. This is not the common factor. So, well, I want to highlight this. And well, I think that, as I say, Anjana, you say a lot. So thank you a lot. That was all. That's all.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a rewarding and enriching conversation. We have just a couple minutes left, but I wanted to leave a little bit of time for each of you to make a maybe a 30-second-ish closing statement or share final thoughts with everyone who's on the call. Anybody want to go first? Go ahead, Maya.
Sorry, Maya, did you want to? Okay. No, I would just say that it's really, trust-based philanthropy isn't that difficult. I think that, there's a lot of kind of jargon out there, and there's a lot of, the kind of terminology around it. I think sometimes like it feels difficult for funders, but, it's basically about being a human and entering into a relationship and, building a kind of normal, trusting kind of friendship with your partners. And it doesn't need to be super complicated. And also, I would say that we've made mistakes as well. And it's being open to kind of failure and making mistakes and learning along the way and coming back and improving your practices.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Alejandro, would you like to go next? A brief word or two?
I think that you were ready, Maya, so go on, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, just similarly to Emily, I feel that working with the principles of trust-based philanthropy are more genuine as human beings, like just feels natural, feels organic, feels good, and I think when things feel easy, that's a sign of where we're supposed to go. I think it's just a matter of exercising like trust and healthy boundaries, but also humane professionalism. It's not, you don't need to go outside of what you're already doing. You don't need to find specific moments in your cycle. Like I said, it's just a daily interaction that you have with your team, with the partners, with other funders, etc. So it feels easy because it's like true to our humanity, I think.
Great. Alejandra, a quick word from you.
Of course, thank you. Well, yeah, I believe that there is a lot of work to be done to make like the relationships between donors and grassroots organizations like feel really equal, but that we are doing the things and we are like on the right track. And I mean, that's what we are having these kind of spaces to talk about that. And I think that's very important as the catalyst change come from this. So yeah, I think that we are working on it, that we can make other kind of dynamics for talking about that to exchange like this knowledge that sometimes you don't want to leave it, but if someone tell you how you can work with, it will be all good. So yeah, that would be
wonderful. Thank you. Anjana, a quick word from you to close us out.
Yes. So I would say it should never be funder-driven approach. we are all, whoever is sitting here, we're all working for community people, with community people. So it should always be that. They should be on priority. So I would say that.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you all for this wonderful conversation. Thank you to everyone who joined this session. It was really fun for me. I hope everyone else had a good time. Thank you to Catalyst for hosting us. And I think we are at time. So thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.